I'm going to take it from here. This is my first time using Riverside, so hopefully I am doing everything correctly. So what I am going to do is I will share my screen. I'll be switching around some of my screens to make sure I can show you different interfaces. I have a short slide. So my hope is that this session, we can make it kind of interactive or kind of like a follow along. I have a few slides prepared, but I'm gonna jump between the slides and the actual Alibaba.com interface so we can kind of see what are the steps and things like that. So I'll start with a quick intro. Alibaba.com is a leading B2B e-commerce platform. So we don't sell anything from our end, but what we do is we connect sellers and buyers from around the world. So we have sellers from millions of products and sellers or suppliers on the market, and also supporting various large number of buyers across different countries, regions with different languages supported. So our goal is to help, especially small and medium-sized businesses, to kind of grow your business and achieve growth. So how I'm going to structure today's session is I'm going to use a framework that focuses on the different stages or the key milestones in your sourcing experience. They include the 6 ones would be search and explore, filter and evaluate, chat and inspire, sample and finalize, pay and fulfill, and eventually manage and scale. So we're going to take a pause at each of these steps. I might skip the very last one since we're still a little bit early in the stage, but each of you to see how you can do that in Alibaba.com and some of the kind of key takeaways or learnings that we have gathered from our sellers and our partners. But before I do that, I have a few kind of call outs to say here. First, today's entire class is about sourcing. And I have to say that sourcing is really important, but it's also very hard. So it's important because by this point, you have done the research, you have done the thinking, you have ideated a lot, maybe some ideas work, some didn't, you have gone through rounds of design. So you have all the ideas. So now it's the time for you to bring your vision to life. And this is not just going to Target or going to any physical store just to see what's available, but more about, okay, you have a very specific vision in your mind. And now how can you find a partner to bring that vision to life? And you're very rarely just thinking about one specific criteria, right? So you have a package of what specs, right? The specifications and other maybe limitations that you might face. So eventually what you're gonna do in this entire process is to take your list or your package of requirements and see who from the market, from the suppliers and manufacturers who is available can best meet your requirements and then bring those kind of like ideas in your head into physical products. So what we're going to learn is to see what are the kind of tools or things you can do to get close to there as efficiently and accurately as possible. And then the other thing I do want to call out as well is that I definitely know that tariff has been a key concern or a question. So on that note, I think one thing that Alibaba.com has been doing very aggressively this year, since last year, is to grow our what we call the global supply chain. So we're expanding beyond kind of what we have already into looking at kind of the global manufacturers in Asia, in Europe, etc., either by our own network or partnering with other platforms in different regions. And the other thing I also want to call out is that, as I mentioned earlier, sourcing is a process where you do need to manage a collection or a list of requirements. So maybe for certain buyers, maybe like locally made is a really critical requirement. But other times you might have to balance out things such as, do they have the capability? What's the lead time? What is their MOQ, which stands for minimum order requirement, right? So there's lots of other factors you do want to consider, and eventually you want to make a decision that can kind of balance out all these things that you have in your mind. There will be trade-offs, there will be iterations, but that's kind of what we're aiming for. So back to our journey. So through this journey, the goal eventually is for you to find that perfect fit and then bring your product to life. And from a volume perspective, I also kind of want to share some of the higher level goals or numbers that you can use as a reference point. So in our platform, we have millions of suppliers and products. Obviously, not all of them are going to be relevant to your category. So when you first do your search, there still might be thousands of options, which is a lot. So the purpose for the filter and evaluate process is to get the funnel kind of narrowed down. And typically what we have seen is some buyers might look for about 5 to 10, others 10 to 20. But the key thing here is that you want to filter and narrow down to not too small, to at least maybe 5, ideally 10 to 20 suppliers that you can chat with to make sure you have a decent enough sample size to assess kind of roughly what's the price range, what's the lead time, what they can or cannot do. And then once you have chatted with those 10 or 20 suppliers, just to get a sense of what they can do with the price, etc., then when you get to the sample stage, what we have observed is that you want to at least place 3 samples, like place sample orders with at least 3 suppliers. So you have kind of a few options of physical items that you can touch, you can feel, you can test things out and see which one might be a better option. And then in the end, while you may eventually end up with 1 supplier, but typically what we have seen is that you might have a list of 2. You will have one primary supplier that is a preferred one, but then you can also kind of through a sampling process have a secondary supplier. So just in case the first one has any issues, you still have a backup. And again, this entire process might be iterative, that maybe you feel like you don't have enough backups, you still need to restart the process. But again, the goal is to make sure that you land with a preferred one, but you still have some plan B and plan C in case the current one doesn't work out. So that's kind of the current process. And then if you have any questions, you can add in the chat, and then I can take a pause and then see if we can either answer live on the spot, or I can follow up with some of the additional information.